Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the exciting, inimicable Coach and Benway podcast. I am the co-host, Dr. Benway. My colleague, Coach Red Pill, has some thoughts on memes, and I don't know how much thoughts I have on memes, but I will certainly be his interlocutor as he expounds and promulgates his exegesis of the prevalence of this communication method. Coach, why don't you take away or start off the conversation? We'll see what happens.
I have a grand theory of memes. You know, this is like up there with relativity and shit. You know, after this, you know, there will be a before and after. And after this, you know, everybody will be, understand the importance of memes. I'm just teasing. Look, I've thought a lot about memes as of late. And I've been wondering why, first of all, the left cannot meme. Why is that the case? And why the right's memes, especially a couple as of late, have been so politically effective. I'm thinking specifically of the NPC meme and the "It's okay to be white" meme. Now the NPC meme it's really not a meme per se. It's more like a character who appears in various memes, right? And whereas the "It's okay to be white" was just that very simple, straightforward, black lettering on white background. It's okay to be white. Which, you know, on its face, it's an incredibly innocuous statement, but it just drove the left insane. I mean, that sentence and also the NPC meme. And why were they so effective? And I have a theory, and I want to spring it on you, Benway, and the audience as well, and see what you all think of this. See, my theory is this, that a politically effective meme is essentially a logic trap. And what it does is highlights the inner contradictions of the opposing political force, okay? For example, take the "It's okay to be white" meme. Now, if the left had said nothing, then the left could interpret that silence, its own silence, as being pro-white, i.e. racist. Because, of course, you know, you can be in favor of every race except white, because if you're in favor of white, you're a racist. But if you're in favor of any other race, pro-Asian, pro-Hispanic, pro-whatever, pro-black, you're, an ally, a good ally, right, of the people of color, right, which is, of course, an incredibly racist ideology. But, of course, that's part of it. So if the left says nothing, they're pro-white and therefore racist. But if they denounce "It's okay to be white," the left is shown to be anti-white, i.e. racist. And so that's the beauty of that particular meme, that either response to it leaves the leftist as a racist, whereas the NPC meme, what's the NPC meme? It's basically saying that people have canned responses to everything that's said. Now, I have to admit, I personally do not quite understand why the left was so incensed by the NPC meme, but by the same token, you know, if the leftists say nothing, then they're tacitly agreeing with the meme that they're NPCs. And if the leftists denounce it with the usual talking points, oh, that's racist or whatever, you know, it's the left can't take a joke, i.e. they're NPCs, right? So either response leads the leftists to be, to be made, to be proven right that the NPC meme applies to them. And so that's my thinking, that a politically effective meme shows that inner contradiction. Now, of course, when I'm talking about like these effective political memes, this is a very reduced subset of memes in general. I mean, memes have been around for, forever. I mean, you can think of those like cartoons, as memes. A meme is a kind of a cartoon, right? And I remember the first meme that I remember, it was a meme. It was this picture of this very beautiful girl, in like a swimsuit, and she was by the beach and smiling, very invitingly towards the camera. And underneath was a sentence: "No matter how good she looks here, someone somewhere is sick of putting up with her shit," right? That was the first meme, self-conscious meme that I ever saw. I must have seen this in the 90s at some point. I mean, like I want to say 97, 98, something like that. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that, see, there's a huge category of memes. I'm just talking very specifically about political memes. and political
That
memes
was
are
going to
effective.
be my
Yeah.
That was going to be my very first question: is to what degree are we talking about a species versus a genus?
Yeah, species. Very reduced,
Exactly. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
specific. Okay, why is it that the left cannot fling an effective meme against right wingers? Because Lord knows they've tried.
Yeah, I mean, because I was about to say, I'm going to take the stupid stupid philosophical question here, which is to say, what do we mean when we say memes? And I was looking it up, and I got to tell you, it kind of wounds my heart to realize it's a neologism from Richard Dawkins.
Really?
It came out of The Selfish Gene, the 76 book, apparently. And it was trying to talk about how thoughts can be approached, or ideas can be treated as almost living structures that transmute from person to person, and what defines that success in there. And he wanted to have a theory about it. Others took it up, I think, in the 90s. But I mean, there are things as banal as, like, to me, the ultimate historic meme. Well, there's two that came to mind. One was the Kilroy is here.
Right. Yes.
Was here meme, which is basically a guy peeking over a wall, and all you see is the top of his face, his nose, and his fingers. Right.
Right.
And perhaps the oldest meme I can think of is the Jesus fish, to a certain extent. That that kind of operates that way, where it communicates a hell of a lot just by whatever it is.
Well, you go back to symbology. I mean, SPQR, which was before the fish, communicated a hell of a lot too. The Roman standard of the eagle, right? Yeah. So
so what's it? So in that vein, let's I feel like I'm a philosophy major here, but this is how I'm approaching it.
I am a philosophy major,
and I figured that you'd appreciate that. If memetics is really about the effectiveness of what ideas can communicate well versus not, because this is the ultimate question, kind of what you're getting at. Like, what makes an effective meme is another way of saying, why can't the left meme more specifically? And the harshest answer I can give, or the ultimate reading of that question, is, if the left cannot meme, it is because the left has no thoughts to communicate.
I disagree with that. Okay, I think it's more sophisticated than the left has no thoughts to communicate, because everybody has thoughts to communicate. They could be banal, but they have something to say at some point. Okay, no, my thinking is that the left cannot meme, or cannot meme as politically effective as the right can meme, because first of all, memes are political attacks. That's what they are ultimately. You are attacking your opponent by pointing something out in their thinking that leads to either an absurdity or a grotesque outcome that anybody sensible would reject. Okay, like for instance, the "it's okay to be white" meme, right? You can't reject it, because if you reject it, you're basically saying it's not okay to be white. It's okay to treat whites like shit and hurt them and harm them and drive them out of their own countries, right? So you can't say that. So what are you left with saying? You see what I mean? That you agree with it? No, that would be quote unquote racist. And so I think that's the conundrum.
I'm almost thinking of it at a level above that. I mean, again, if we're thinking about memes and using it from the language from whence it came, that it's an organic question of thought, what constitutes the success. Sure, the left, in theory, has things it could communicate, but the degree to which they don't is the degree to which they are analogous to things like the liger, or these animals that interbreed and produce basically a genetic dead end, right? Literally, like, the thought cannot, I mean, even if it's successfully communicated from one person to another, it is not successfully spread. It is effectively inert of a thought. To me, that's why I said there's no thought to communicate, not in the sense that there's literally no language that can be consumed or ideas behind it, as much as the language itself cannot survive in be it the body politic or the human species, whatever you want to do. To me, that actually is something substantial to that.
Yeah, I
moment
agree.
In time. Yeah,
I agree, but I think that question is separate from what makes a politically effective meme. I mean, the politically effective meme.
Well, okay, well, let's pause at that point. So how do you define political effectiveness?
A politically effective meme would be a meme such that either to embrace it or to reject it would show up the contradictions of the person who is the political idea that is being targeted by the meme. It shows its inner contradiction or its inner absurdity or its inner heartlessness or inner inherent idiocy.
I think that's a piece of the effectiveness, right? But if you look at, It's Okay to Be White, because that is a successful meme.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Part of it, yes, is when the object of your criticism, namely a left-winger, approaches it, they have a logical, internal, brain fart, for lack of a better term. They don't know how to respond to it in a way that doesn't reveal who they are in some respect. Yeah. But if you also look at how that is successful, people embrace that meme independent of the response of their interlocutors, right? You literally, it's a mantra that you can use in and of itself. It's okay to be white. It is almost the mantra of our side. I'm willing to bet in a lot of instances, it's not really engaging just in that strategy you're giving. So to me, yes, that strategy is an important piece of part of the success. But I think the other piece that you have to consider is that it is just successfully transmitted almost like a virus in a positive sense, but like that, it's just it captures the fire of the mind, and it's not just because the left sucks at looking at it, right? I mean, that's that's only a piece of the puzzle.
Well, no, it's that memes inherently capture your attention. Okay, that's the point of them. They're supposed to amuse you or make you think, not necessarily particularly profound thoughts, but just makes you sit up and pay attention. For instance, the original meme the first meme that I ever consciously saw, the one about the pretty girl and people being sick of putting up with her shit, or some guy being sick of putting up with her shit, right? Now, that kind of, how can I put this? That meme in and of itself, it makes you think. But it makes you think very little. It just, makes you smile for 2 seconds and you move on and you forget about it, right? But I'm interested in politically effective memes because what I'm really interested in this conversation is coming up with a kind of algorithm that would allow us to create more and consistently better memes that would hurt the left, that would make the normies see how absurd they actually are. I have great respect to these two memes from the Chans. I believe that both of them originated from the Chans, right? I have great respect for them because I think that they did this. They were politically effective, and it seems to me that the Chans produce memes, at an accelerated pace, and it becomes like a hit and miss process. And I guess my thinking on this whole issue is I want to direct it more towards the Chans to help them sort of like go where there's gold, instead of just striking rock time after time and then eventually by sheer luck hitting gold. I want to create some kind of algorithm, some kind of systematic way of thinking about memes so that people can hit that vein of gold. Not every time, of course, but more times so that it becomes like more of a rush. Because I think that the NPC meme and the It's Okay to Be White meme were so effective. The mainstream media, they had like a flash of the NPC meme, and then they were smart enough to just totally ignore it, right? Because by ignoring it, they like tried to memory hold the whole thing because it did eat at them. And by the way, parenthetically, I want to ask you, why was it that particular meme drove the left so crazy? Do you have any idea?
Which one?
The NPC meme.
My take on what drove them crazy was the fact that one of two things were going on. One, either they recognized it to be true, that could be one, so it's a matter of self-critique, or alternatively, they took it at face value in the sense that they were being dehumanized. And let's be fair. Let's read our opponents generously. Mm-hmm. That is, in some sense, the conclusion you'd have to take from the NPC meme. There's something less than an agency there, right? You could be physically human, but spirit. To use biblical language, there's no spiritual human there.
Right.
It's almost like an animal that you're dealing with. Yeah, I mean that could very well have been the case. They felt themselves effectively attacked. You know, that is because like I don't think none of the left wing responses to the meme argumentative were necessarily off, other than when they just simply reproduced the whole point of the meme. Like and they call you like, oh, you people who propagate the meme are racist, xenophobes, and everything. That's when they reproduce the meme. But if their response was, oh, I'm being dehumanized, well, that's actually fairly accurate. I think that is an accurate assumption of what we're doing. But that's kind of my assessment from there. You have a broader question though. Can memes be created algorithmically?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Let me rephrase that. Not algorithmically, because memes, to an extent, are a kind of art. And, there is no real algorithm for creating art. Whenever you hit on an algorithm to create art, all of a sudden it stops being art, and we recognize it instantly. We had a long conversation yesterday about the novel The Hours, which I think both agree is an algorithmically created novel, right? That sort of like an MFA kind of thing that, just stick in the right ingredients, stir the pot, and voila, you have it, right? And I think that you and I would both agree that any kind of work that depends on an algorithm is not artistic, and therefore is not artful, and therefore it fails. And so I think the same of memes, that if you have like an algorithm, do this, and that in step, then you're going to fail. Your memes are not going to be effective. But I'm thinking more along the lines of guidelines, of ways of thinking that will allow you to strike on memes. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's hard then to be very pinpoint prescriptive on it, because I think ultimately a meme's, in some sense, forgive the extreme language, a poetic or prose poetic simplification of the tenor of the thought governing the social moment. Mm-hmm. To put it even more succinctly, it is a crystalline little fleck of the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's a critique. That's the thing about the politically effective memes. It's critiquing very subtly by bringing out the inherent contradictions of the opposing side. Now, my thinking is that the left can't meme because the right is inherently intellectually coherent. Okay, the right's ideas in general, not all ideas are perfectly coherent, and there's an issue of corporatism, and a kind of crony capitalism, within the right. But leaving that all aside, in general, the right is fairly consistent in its ideas, and therefore it's hard to nail it for internal inconsistencies, internal contradictions. And that's why the left cannot meme. That's my thinking. What do you think? Do you think that this is accurate? I mean, try to step outside yourself, because we are both men of the right, and so of course we think that our team is wonderful. But trying to look at it.
Well, I have been, and this is why I say that if the left cannot meme, I don't think it's because the left can't find contradictions to our side. They can be found. Trust me.
Yeah.
And I think they make them.
Mm-hmm.
The left cannot meme because that argument that is trying to be made in the meme, if indeed you think of it as an argument, made, doesn't resonate with the overall zeitgeist per se. And let's be honest, a lot of these memes, by and large, live in an online world, right? So the zeitgeist, to be fair, is fairly constricted. Yes, I know it's okay to be white appears on college campuses and it freaks out, and yes, the mainstream media picks up on it. But the true environment from which they're produced is frankly the online world, and the online world is a little bit more dominated by our ilk, to be perfectly honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so it will always be a superior breeding ground for these things. The left may very well achieve success but it will be outside of this, like I said, this environment that will produce these memes.
Well, my thinking has always been that the right dominates online because the mainstream media is so supersaturated with leftist ideology, and which very consciously, self-consciously, squeezes out any kind of right-wing or conservative viewpoints and calls them anathema and bad, and just shits all over any kind of conservatism. And therefore, the right has found refuge online. I mean, there are a lot of guys, like, for instance, Roosh V, for instance. Whatever you think of the guy, he has the drive and the push to have been a mainstream writer, to have been a guy who wrote for, big five or big six or however many there are now publishers. But he got squeezed out, and they'd never take him seriously. They'd laugh him out. And he has huge sales. He has huge sales of his books. But, the political environment is such that he's squeezed down and he's only online, right? I'm just talking about one guy. There are lots of other guys like him. And so it seems that's the problem, that online is the refuge of conservatives or people who are anti-left. And yeah, and online, the meme is the reigning mechanism of cultural exchange, of jokes, because it's easy. Because when you're working at, like, say, Simon & Schuster, you and I are working at Simon & Schuster, and, I go up to you and tell you a joke, right? Because we're at the water fountain or the coffee station or whatever, and we shoot the shit and I tell you a joke. But online, how do you do that? It's a meme,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the thing we have to keep in mind is, and this is why I go back to the original idea of memetics. If memetics functionally operates like William Burroughs had it in his head, that successful language operates like a virus, then you have to come to the conclusion, and certainly this is mine, that the online world, of which our ilk has a better ability to navigate through these waters, is frankly the better conduit for viral expansion. Think about, like, in the older days, right? I would have said that word virus that gets into your head and cannot escape, like an earwig, would have occurred in things like, whatever his face was, I forget the man's name, who during the House Un-American Activities Committee responded to Senator McCarthy as, "Sir, at long last have you no sense of decency?"
Right.
That word virus entered the mind, and you will never escape that with Joe McCarthy. That is his epitaph,
right,
on his tombstone. The mainstream media, so-called, books, what have you, all of those channels are shattered enough to the point where they don't really have the highways and byways through the shared collective mind to really get the viral impact that they would. Rachel Maddow certainly can say whatever the hell she wants. She's not shared around, the collective community like Tucker Carlson videos are.
No.
Certainly nowhere near like these, like the memes that find their way through, be it Reddit, 4chan, Twitter, what have you. They're just more successful at getting into the water supply. And I think that's probably part of the reason we're much more successful. The left has to compete in these waterways to be viral, and they just frankly get drowned out. They don't have as effective a presence on that front.
Let me ask you something. Turning the conversation a little bit away from memes and more towards left-wing art and right-wing art. For those of you just catching this episode yesterday or the other day, I don't know when it'll be released, we talked at some length about The Hours. The Hours was a novel by Michael Cunningham, clearly left-wing, ideologically feminist, under the sway of feminism and, quite frankly, catering to that ideology. Now, I wonder, is there such a thing as right-wing art today? And if there is, where is it appearing? Where's the great right-wing novel appearing right now?
Well, that's a tough question because I don't really have a good answer to it. Well, I certainly haven't seen it. And if I haven't seen it, it almost by definition can't be great. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I mean that a great novel in theory, right? That we're emphasizing the word great here, would be something that the collective mentality would all know by now.
Mm.
So that's why I say I would have heard about it. By that same token, I don't think there's a great left-wing novel either, right? There are no great novels, period. I think that's a key piece of the puzzle here. And the question you now have to ask is like, where are the potential for great works of art to occur? And I'm not saying that they are occurring. I'm saying where their potential is.
Mm-hmm.
Movies seem to be kind of trickling away.
Yeah.
It's probably some form of television or online, products of what, no, by products, I mean that those artifacts which are produced online. I don't mean like, oh, this t-shirt you can buy online, that's the work of art these days. I don't mean that. I mean something produced through the internet may be the closest swing we get. It's hard for me to think of right now, though, too many, just focused on television shows that are overtly, strongly right wing. I think of examples that work well from a right wing perspective, but I also know that the creators behind it aren't particularly right wing. So, is it right wing? Is it not? Who knows? Maybe it's just the perspective you bring to it. I don't feel like I've given you a confident answer on where you can find these things, but because we don't live in confident times, that may very well be as best as it goes.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, what are the right wing cultural artifacts? Because I mean, like we were talking about Cobra Kai, right? And that seems to be fairly red-pilled, fairly conservative. Right?
Except the creators are anti-Trump to the hardest core and are shitty Democrats. Unfortunately, I've discovered.
Okay, well, but that's weird because their sensibility was certainly not that.
Well, that's the thing. Then this is the interesting philosophy, the interesting critique, and I mean this in the tradition of literary critique, but you can apply it to reading films and reading TV. Is the degree to which, whether the author, conscientious or not, depicts a reality or a kind of representation of the reality that captures something above what they were planning on. So I don't think Cobra Kai was planned as a left-wing tirade, nor did they think they thought of it as a right-wing tirade. That being said, it is a story effectively about fathers and sons, or fathers and children, the importance and the need, consciously in a very visceral level, for one. That certainly is something completely, simpatico, right, with our thinking. And then that then becomes a question: how does art commensurate with our point of view come about? It's, I think in the case of Cobra Kai, clearly happened unintentionally, or at the very least happened in such a way not in the manner in which the creators had intended.
Yeah, because I wonder about that. I wonder about where's the great right-wing novel? Because, well, first of all, we have to keep in mind that the novel really had its peak as an art form in the 19th century. It was a 19th century art form. And in the 20th century, it was replaced by film. And finally, in the late 20th century, early 21st century, it became television, which sort of like incorporated a lot of the elements of the novel into the medium of film, because that's what really happened. If you think about it, if you look at The Sopranos, for example, which I think would be sort of like the first great TV show that was like that in the sense of it being like this long, involved story about people and these people making moral decisions and stances in the world. That really was like a combination of the novel in terms of having the space to have all of these stories running, and film, because it was made cinematically. It was made like a movie. I mean, it just so happened that they were projected on a TV screen, but it just as easily could have been, every episode, every season could have been shown in a film theater, and it would have been perfectly fine. You know what I mean? But go ahead.
Well, here's a thought. Here's my attempt at grand theory. Off the seat of my pants, linking to what I had said when we were talking about, amongst other things, the hours. Remember how I said what it seemed to be a common theme with those moments when we had a moral objection to a film was an intentional reduction of individuals in those stories to the point where they intentionally removed humanity from them. They
Right.
turned people into paper, right? Well, what then does that mean when something is good, successful, great? It is a situation where even if you reduce it to like a narrative structure, you still have captured the fundamental complexities, realities, the honesties of human beings.
Yeah.
If you are in that vein, whether your perspective going in is right or left wing, you invariably will have to reproduce or create or reflect on a reality which is fundamentally true and in some sense potentially, if we believe ourselves to be right, fundamentally compatible with our worldview. How do let's tie that back to memes. What makes an effective meme? I think in those examples you gave, particularly those two,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's the reduction of reality to literally a phrase,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in that reduction still maintains or has a wickedly sharp understanding of the human reality.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be white. In that one sentence, you have encapsulated many thoughts. One, the sheer obvious statement, yes, it is okay to be white. It has captured in that there are others who would say it is not okay to be white.
Right.
The thought of why, it does, in thinking about it and reflecting on it, it doesn't, in some sense, restrict and come across as amateurish. It opens up thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think when the left tries to meme, they do that sin I had told you about in art, which is they try to limit and turn things into paper, the falseness of humanity. That could
Yeah.
be partly why they fail.
Yeah. The left is trying intellectually to rein people in, to have a set of pre-approved thoughts, whereas the right wing is sort of like opening thought. It's allowing people to think more complex thoughts than anticipated.
And to be brutally honest, I think in a given political situation, the minority or insurgent opinion is better able to do that than the dominant opinion. The dominant opinion invariably is inherently, almost invariably, not perfectly. I mean, I'm willing to be convinced of exceptions, but they're inherently defending something that is already, been promulgated and can only in some sense be subject to critique. So it becomes a defensive posture. It has to kind of limit things in order to keep things kind of protected.
Yeah.
When you're an insurgent, fuck all.
Exactly.
You have the ability and the opportunity to act fearlessly, because what do you have to lose?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That could be why at this moment we are successful. Let's say, for the sake of argument, let's advance 150 years from now. Maybe we're in a dominant position then. I don't know. God only knows 150 years from now. Would we still be the great memers, especially if we had like 100 years of success and maybe are exposing, the frayed edges of our thinking? Probably we wouldn't. That's my theory.
Yeah, probably not.
How do you like that from my grand theory?
Yeah, the issue that the left is the dominant cultural narrative and to many extents the dominant political narrative. And so much of our lives in universities, in private corporations, we're having to toe this leftist ideological line for fear of losing our jobs, our positions, our social standing, losing out on opportunities for advancement and what have you. There's a certain kind of people, the vast majority of people don't care. They're perfectly fine with it. The normies, they're fine. They don't really care one way or the other because at the end of the day, if they for them it's meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Normies tend to look at the world as like, I have to toe lines set by other people, and I'll toe them, fine, because I want to get certain things. But it's people like us who for whatever reason, we go to the liminal case. We always try to push those boundaries. We always are thinking that, no, this boundary, why do I have this boundary? We're the people who are threatening, and I don't think it's just this current leftist orthodoxy. I think that if it were reversed, we would be the ones saying, well, how come we can't all be trannies or whatever? You know what I mean?
Well, we also had really good memes against the conservative Republican establishment. Think of how negatively they responded to the term "cuck."
Oh yeah,
they really hated that.
Yeah,
Really hated that.
Yeah, because it was so descriptive.
I mean, it's almost like the best way I could think of the effectiveness of memes, to talk in parables, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like we are the inmates in Nurse Ratchet's mental hospital, and she's constantly speaking. Her power comes from her words. She constantly repeats the same mantras to keep people subdued. It's the equivalent of, diversity is our strength, the plethora of great restaurants, how dare you think of this way or the other, the next Holocaust is coming, all that jazz. Mm. What is the effective way that she is undermined? By the snide remarks, the cute, attitudes that doesn't fit in, the jokes that pierce that authority, that makes her question herself or removes her confidence. Maybe this is where you were getting at, in the sense that what you thought was very successful about those memes was that it forces the subject of said memes into a contradiction or a complication that they can't easily work themselves out of. It feels like that in times, that's, and you extend it further, right? What did people, if you listen to people in Eastern Europe under communism, if you talk to a number of them, a lot of them will say one of the things that kept them alive and kept them sane and helped along the process of continually undermining the communist authority was the constant sharing of jokes against the communist system.
Yeah.
It was the mechanism by which you like I said, you kept yourself together and focused, and you kept undermining their fucking authority.
Right. Yeah.
There are collections of communist joke books that basically make this argument. I will try to look for one and send you a link to put in the video description, because they do operate like that. They were the memes that were part of the strategy that broke the dominant thinking. Yeah. Because the dominant thinking demands you to take them seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're not taking them seriously, if you're having a laugh at their expense, it's not only are you, when you have a laugh at somebody's expense, you're usually pointing out a contradiction of them, right? Or some foolishness on their part. And so the dominant culture, when you point out something foolish or something contradictory in their thinking, it undermines them both if you point out their thinking is contradictory, sure, but it also, by pointing out their foolishness, because a lot of times they derive their authority from their sententiousness, from their self-importance, their grandeur. And when you mock that grandeur, that self-importance, even if they were right, but by mocking that, it undermines their authority. Yeah.
Yes.
And no authority can long tolerate a relentless attack on its seriousness, because if you attack its seriousness, then even if they are correct in their ideas and the logical structure of their society or their authority, right? If you mock their seriousness, then you undermine that. That's why a joker is always in a very dangerous position vis-a-vis authority.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess that's why. I guess that's why it's probably. It's funny. The most memorable comedies I can think of behind the Iron Curtain were playing very dangerous games.
Yeah,
very dangerous games. I mean, I can come up with titles that are really untranslatable and nobody would have seen them in the West, but they invariably, the most memorable comedy films are making fun of the bureaucratic insanity of the Soviet systems. Yeah. We're playing a very dangerous game with those.
Yeah, because the Soviets, for those of you who don't know, the Soviets, they sort of like allowed making fun of bureaucrats, but only up to a point. And that point was always shifting. And because the bureaucrats were the ones who, of course, authorized the making of the film or allowed the publication of the book or what have you. And so if if you cross that line, or if that line inadvertently moved underneath your feet and you wound up on the wrong side of it, the consequences could be severe, up to and including being sent to the gulag, where you'd likely spend either 10 years at forced labor or quite likely die because of that 10 years of forced labor. You know, a lot of times they sent people and gave them 10 years of forced labor knowing full well that it would kill them. That was the point. Yeah. So it's
Well, yeah.
and we're sort of like in that stage now, because now culturally, the line of what is acceptable or not, what is tolerable or considered intolerable, keeps moving around that fucking line. They can't nail it shut and nail it down. It's like moving around like you know those lassos that you know trick cowboys do. They swing it around and around and it keeps moving all over the place, and you can never tell where it's going to be. It's like that. It's. I would be more worried if I were a leftist, quite frankly. Because on the right, I can say whatever the fuck I want, and everybody's like, man, he's pretty out there. That's the worst that they can say. But on the left, you know, I could have the most jejune opinions. And if suddenly the cultural tide shifts, the line moves, I'm fucked. I'm totally fucked. Yeah, it's pretty damn funny.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think others have noticed it. And I think there's truth to this when I say that comedy often, almost all the time, is at someone's expense.
Yes, it's always at somebody's expense. By definition, yeah.
If that's the case, then the left is in a very precarious position indeed, because too much has to be taken seriously. Everybody's pain is, the source of their beauty. Yeah, so what are you gonna do? Like like the Don Rickles jokes. I mean, the man would have been shot and executed. I feel like these days, if he kept
Jackie Gleason,
any of. I mean, look at all you can. Frankly, and this is something I've noticed. You can take a look at some of the quote unquote ranking comedians of today. By that I mean your late talk show hosts kind of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Rewind them 10 years ago. They're all doing jokes and whatnot that would never pass. Like gay panic jokes ran aplenty throughout the 80s and 90s. A few generations earlier, making jokes about, like what the black people tend to be like or what have you.
Yeah.
Richard
Pryor would have been crucified for the jokes that he's told.
This is an interesting, I was trying to think about this earlier, and can you think of, and I know there are cases like this, I mean, even in our society, the American society, who were the comedians, because invariably, like, who were censored in our country, because occasionally they
Lenny
do
Bruce.
get censored. And around Lenny Bruce was one, the Smothers Brothers, frankly, for criticizing Nixon.
Right, but Nixon appeared on the Smothers Brothers show.
No, he appeared on Laugh-In.
Oh, right. But he wasn't censored. Who censored him, or how were they censored?
Well, the Smothers Brothers were censored through the studio. I think CBS. They were on CBS. I could be wrong. What channel? Forgive me.
Mm-hmm.
It was either ABC, CBS, or NBC. I think it was CBS. Basically, they kept on digging at the president, and eventually CBS said, we're not going to let you continue. And
but was that because Nixon's administration put some sort of political pressure on?
Here's the thing. I honestly don't know whether Nixon, went and said, shut him down, or it was just the standards of the studio heads in and of themselves wouldn't put up with it, because that's part of the thing too. It doesn't have to necessarily be your specific targets that's shutting you down. It could just be the social mass that is in alignment with them.
I mean, if I were running any one of these talk shows or one of these networks, I would tell Colbert, for instance, who I don't even know what network he's on. I would tell Colbert, enough with the Trump jokes, because it's just alienating people and it's divisive, and this is supposed to be an inclusive show. And I'm saying this not in the leftist kind of inclusive, but in the actual use of the word inclusive. That is, it's supposed to include people, not alienate people. And so you're going to have to adjust your comedy or you're gone. Because I honest to God, think that this kind of comedy it's exclusionary. It alienates people in a way that renders them really bitter. Because I don't want to see fucking Colbert anywhere. I fucking hate that fucker. And I don't even see him. I mean, I don't have American TV. The clips I have seen are enough for me to fucking despise the guy. I mean, I really fucking hate his guts. Because I don't mind guys who are left-wing. You know, I mean, comedians and what have you. You can be left-wing, right-wing. You can be whatever the fuck you want. I don't care. And I don't think that there's any such thing as a sacred cow. You want to make fun of Trump and his hair or this or that. But the relentless and false attacks and just the sense that anybody who agrees with Trump is either a fool or a Nazi. I don't want to stomach the guy. I don't want him around. I don't want to listen to the son of a bitch. You know, I want him gone. You know, and so if I were the head of a network, yeah, and it wouldn't be like Trump pressuring me. It would seem to me that it's just a smart business decision that you cannot alienate people. Because, I mean, how many people do you think are on my boat in the sense that they hate Colbert and they do not want to see him anywhere? I mean, I'm guessing a pretty high percentage of people, right?
Well, I'm sure it's probably commensurate or at least in significant overlap with the portion of the population that voted for the president.
Yeah, but
let's say 50%.
I bet there are a lot of people who didn't even vote for Trump who are sort of like sick and tired of it because it's just
I mean,
alienates.
Even so, I mean, we're on the order of 50% of the country, somewhere along those lines.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that's certainly the case. You know, and I was, you know, thinking of like just other examples of people who went down that route, but they weren't necessarily alienating people as much as they were alienating, you know, specific individuals that counted. And I think again of, you know, the Norm Macdonald, for example, got fired from SNL because he made one too many O.J. Simpson jokes about O.J. really being guilty. And the thing is, the head of the studio was a good friend of O.J.
Right, Don
Simpson,
Ohlmeyer,
and Don Ohlmeyer, and you know, that infuriated to no end. I mean, you know, it's you know, comedy, and I think memes, especially since the memes we're dealing with in outside of It's Okay to Be White, because that is not necessarily comedy there. That's a particularly interesting case, but oftentimes it is comedy, and comedy in theory should be, in its best sense, right? You should be playing with fire, right? And it's,
well, I think of the It's Okay to Be White meme as this I think it is funny, not in and of itself, but rather the reaction of people to it, how they contort themselves, because the people on the left reject it, and then they realize that by rejecting it, they're falling into this logic trap, and that's where the comedy comes from. It's watching people react to it. It's a you know, like there are certain, you know, you can drop in I don't know what it's called. I forget the name in chemistry. I studied it so many years ago, of that thing that you drop it into a solution, and that thing starts the crystallization process of the entire solution.
oh, supersaturation.
Yeah, but it's yeah. Well, I don't know, but it's that thing that element, like in Ice Nine, in what you call it in Cat's Cradle, that you drop it in there, and it creates the crystallization of the solution. That's right. My thinking about that meme. That's my thinking about memes in general. That they are this catalyst that forces people to react in ways that are funny, and that either reaction shows the contradiction of the person. The only appropriate response to the meme is to just laugh at it, you know. And if you take it seriously, you're fucked.
That's what makes it an interesting. Thinking of it as a catalyst, that's an interesting comparison, right? Because a catalyst, from a scientific perspective, does not in and of itself take part in the reaction.
Right.
A catalyst merely causes the other key elements of this mixture, who under normal circumstances wouldn't do shit, to suddenly interact with each other, right?
Exactly.
So what does that tell you? It tells you that an effective meme maker has to be one critically observant with regard to the elements of the culture around him.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So it's not necessarily your formula, but it is certainly the architecture of said meme, right? You have to be kind of perceptive, right?
You have to pay attention to the target of your meme, and you have to be paying attention to what things that they would react negatively and irrationally towards, and then find a pair of those that are inherently contradictory, but that can be sourced from the same thing, right? Again, going back to the it's okay to be white. If you agree with that, you're a racist. If you disagree with that, you're a racist. And so you have to find a line, a catalyst like that nails two contradictory ideas of your political opponents and ties them together. That would seem to be the way to go. That is the way that a meme, a politically effective meme, a meme that can blow the minds off the leftists. Because what's happened is that, it seems to me that memes up to this point have been sort of like hit or miss, of just like trying and throwing shit up against the wall time after time until they hit on something. But perhaps a faster way is to sort of like pick two things that the left is contradictory on. Like, for instance, a simple one. Here's two things that the left is contradictory on. They want more immigrants into the Western democracies, right? Immigration, good. But they, at the same time, they want higher wages for workers. But those two things are contradictory, because if you have higher wages for the workers, then you need fewer workers, because the only way to push up the price of labor is to have a limited supply of labor. But if you have an endless supply of labor, right, then you get to the depression of wages. So a great meme would be, for instance, keep out those immigrants so that we may have so that the workers may have better wages.
It's
a bad meme, but you know what I'm saying.
It's a bad. Well, but here's the thing, and the fact that it is bad is bad meme is a teachable moment. Excuse me.
Yeah.
A meme cannot operate primarily at the intellectual level. It can spark intellectual considerations, but I think an effective carrier or a catalyst, because that's what the meme is, has to just be operate at a visceral level, right? It's okay to be white. You don't need to necessarily intellectual,ize that, right? It's just very clear. NPC, you have to know what an NPC is, but once you do, it's
child's play, yeah.
The other meme example, right, that I've been thinking about, because I don't know that it fits anything perfectly well. The Pepe meme was very effective, and Pepe in and of itself didn't really critique or show the contradiction in leftist thought, right? It just represented something that annoyed the fuck out of them, right? Literally, like, you remember that moment when Hillary named the alt-right, these dangerous elements called the alt-right, and then someone screams, Pepe, and then it was almost like, they're here. I remember the meme about that. It's like Hillary's doing her thing, like the alt-right, and as someone screams, as soon as someone screamed Pepe, you see her like shit her pants and whisper, oh no, they're here.
Yeah, I remember. But no, I think I remember her like talking about Pepe like it was this terribly dangerous thing. It's just a fucking joke. Oh man, that was.
It's a frog.
Yes.
It's a frog.
It's a frog. It's a frog. The frogs are coming. The frogs are gay. Anyway, look, the meme, the very bad meme I created, but it's sort of like the point, to find something that if you agree with it, you're against one tenet of your political opponents. If you disagree, then you're against another tenet of your political opponents. And it has to be in such a way that it's funny, that it sort of like captures. It has to be either said in a very succinct way or said in a way that is just superficially inoffensive. But like, because it's okay to be white is just such an inoffensive statement. Because it's okay to like broccoli. It's okay to go to the movies or something. These are innocuous statements. Because
one of
it's
my
okay
favorite
is an innocuous statement. I'm sorry. What are your favorite? What?
Well, it's almost like one of my favorite. I think it is effectively a meme. Is I'm sure you are aware of it. I don't know that our audience is. Esquire magazines always had a picture of Nixon laughing in a weird way, and the caption was always, "Why is this man laughing?" Which is great because all it does is conjure up images like what the fuck sinister shit is on his mind kind of thing. And I feel like that's something akin to that is very useful, or could be very useful against any number of these players. I mean, Trump does it almost on a daily basis. Obviously, Pocahontas for Elizabeth Warren has effectively not just sunk her career, but broke her brain. You know what I mean?
It's fucking funny. Funny as hell.
Low energy Jeb, or just Jeb. If that was interesting, because he turned Jeb's own campaign slogan into a meme against him. It was a really thing to see, right? I mean, it's just, and there's not even an argument there. It's just like, Jeb is stupid. Jeb! Exclamation point. It was things like that. And and just look at the crop of players that are going to be coming into the next Congress. I mean, you're telling me we're not going to be able to figure out an Ocasio-Cortez meme?
Well, yeah, Ocasio-Cortez is already making noises that she wants to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. Even before she'd been sworn in, she led a protest of incoming congressmen to against Nancy Pelosi being the speaker. It's damn funny. Yeah, I think. Well, to tell you the truth, I don't think there are going to be many memes about Ocasio-Cortez, because I think that a lot of people who despise the left, the Democrats, are just going to let her do her thing. She's just like a nightmare. But anyway, that's for another conversation. We're going to have that conversation, by the way. But what I find really interesting about memes and stuff in general is that ultimately, what we said before is right. It's the dominant power hates memes. The dominant power wants to shut memes down because they don't want the ridicule. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with the Article 13 thing in the EU? I mean, with all the copyright stuff that's going to happen. I mean, what do you think is going to happen with memes in general?
The same way the Soviets dealt with jokes in Eastern Europe. Nothing. Frankly, I mean, yeah, you'll arrest a few no good nicks, right? But the more you arrest them, the wider spread the joke's gonna get.
No, not arrest them, but deplatform them. They can just shut them down. You shove them off YouTube, off Facebook, all the rest of it. I personally think that this is going to start some kind of wave of alternative platforms of some sort of decentralized platform. Because, see, if they push this agenda, right now, we YouTubers who are more on the forefront of this kind of free speech movement and deplatforming, right? We've been noticing this, but once Article 13 is implemented, it's going to be imposed on a lot more people, a lot more casual users. And wouldn't that be like the perfect moment to have some sort of thing that would like circumvent the whole EU thing?
I mean, it could be. I mean, it's notoriously difficult for me to predict things like this because there are just so many variables. I just simply, what I have to believe is that the need for expression, and particularly expression that pokes the nose of authority, finds ways to permeate itself. The best I can do is to reference another meme and do the Jeff Goldblum's like, life finds a way.
Yes, life finds a way. And memes find a way. Yeah. So anyway, this has been a discussion of memes, and it was just something that was on my mind as of late. I don't think we came to any grand conclusion about this stuff, but I think it's provided food for thought, because I think that memes are really interesting, and it seems to be the cultural currency that we're going to have for quite a while. And it's interesting to think that because of the EU situation, we're going to soon have sort of like a dissident underground, a dissident underground cultural movement, which I think is going to be really interesting. Yeah. Now, I don't have anything more to say, and I don't know about you, Dr. Benway.
Well, you can ask. I don't, unless you want me to have the final note.
I have the final note.
What, me worry?
What you worry. Exactly. So on that happy note, this has been the Coach and Benway podcast. Thank you very much for listening in, and we will catch you next time. Take it easy.